Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Tonight we have a special topic. We will cover two ayat, two verses from Surat Nour. As we know, Nour means light. Very good. So we have in the Quran one chapter, one surah called Surat Nour, the chapter of light. We all know how important light is. Without light, we cannot see. In fact, the default in this universe is darkness. We go outside of Earth, it's all dark except where you have light. So light is the exception. Light is the miracle. And as we have physical light, we also have figurative light. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He called this book, He called it light. So this revelation from God is light, meaning it will provide you guidance in this life. So one of the meanings of light is guidance, because light, it shows you the way. So you're not walking in darkness. You don't stumble because you have a clear path in front of you, well lighted, so you're able to see ahead of you. So this surah, this chapter, discusses light from many different aspects. And today, inshallah, I want to talk about two verses where it is discussing the opposite. So the opposite of light is darkness. And the reason we discuss it is because we have to be aware of it. Just like we want light, we want to avoid darkness. And these two verses talk about two different types of, if you will, misguidance. Two different paths that are wrong, that are false, that we should not take. So the reason we study them is to avoid them. So we'll go over the two verses first. We'll talk about the meaning, and then we'll discuss some of the lessons, inshallah. All right. So here it says in Surah Nour, which is number 24, and the verses are 39 and 40. So, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, it says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بِقِيعَةٍ. So, it says the disbelievers, also the people who cover the good actions, meaning they don't do good actions, or those people who cover their true color as well. So they have a persona, like they wear a mask, and you cannot tell their real personality. They're hiding behind a mask. So that's also the meaning of kufr, which is to cover and to hide. And it's interesting, the word kufr or kafar in Arabic, and the word cover in English. So you know what cover means, right? And the word kafara in Arabic is very similar. In fact, I think cover came from kafara. But I need to check this out. But the meaning is very, very similar. Now, it says, those people, أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بِقِيعَةٍ. Their actions, their deeds, are like sarab. Now I'm going to talk about some vocabulary, some words in Arabic, and then translate in English, because I want you to memorize those words. They're really important. And it's good to add it to your Arabic vocabulary. So the first word is sarab. Sarab is a mirage. Does anyone not know the meaning of mirage? Not the name Mi'raj. Some people are called Mi'raj, not that. Mirage in English. So mirage is a phenomena. Actually, it's an optical illusion. So if you are in a hot summer day, around noon, you're driving or riding a car, some of you can't drive yet, you see in the horizon, like in front of you, on the road, you see what looks like water. Or it looks like a small pond or a small little puddle of water. Except as you approach it, it disappears. It evaporates. Because it is not real, it's not water, it's just an optical illusion. So that is the meaning of sarab. In English, it is mirage. We call it a mirage. So here we see in this ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, those actions are like a mirage. So they appear to be something they're not. أعمالهم كسراب بقيعة. So the first word is sarab, meaning mirage. The second word is قيعة. Now قيعة is a plural of قاع. And قاع is like a flat land. Because usually you can observe a mirage when it is over a horizontal surface, a flat, plain surface. So it says it's like a mirage and a plain, flat surface. قيعة, again, the plural of قاع. يحسبه الظمآن ماء. The thirsty person will think that this is water. So imagine now you're in the desert. You're not in a comfortable, air-conditioned car. You are in the desert. And it happened in the past, and people used to travel in the desert. And you are so thirsty. You've run out of water. And all of a sudden you start seeing these mirages around you. And you get so excited. And you start walking, and running. Till you get there and there's nothing. But you start seeing it again in the distance. So you start running again, and you come and there's nothing. So this is the kind of imagery, this is the kind of image that you see in this verse. And it's really important to be able to imagine, to be able to visualize what the Quran is telling us. The Quran has given us some visuals. So the first visual is this man chasing a mirage. You could see how frustrating that is, especially if you're thirsty. You keep going after something that does not exist, but you think it exists, and your hope comes up again, and then you say it's probably next. You go and chase it, and you see nothing, and that hope disappears, evaporates, and then you see water again, and you try and run to catch it, to seize it, but there is nothing. So this is the scenario or the description in this ayah. حتى إذا جاءه لم يجده شيئا. It says, until you get to it and you see nothing. There's nothing there. ووجد الله عنده فوفاه حسابه. But look what the verse says. Rather, he finds God there. And God will basically reckon him. There's going to be some auditing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will audit your actions. He will survey your actions and see what you got. The deeds you've committed, the deeds that you've done in this life. So this is what's going to be there. Alright. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk about, the verse, what it means, but keep that visual in mind. That is the first scene, if you will. The second scene, in the second verse, it says, أَوْ كَظُلُمَاتٍ, or it's like layers of darkness. Zulumat is a plural of zulma, and zulma is like pitch dark. But zulumat is a plural. And in English, you cannot say darknesses. I don't think you can make a plural out of darkness. So we say it's layers of darkness. Imagine layer after layer of darkness. في بحر لجي, in a sea that is bottomless. Like imagine an ocean, a sea that does not have a bottom. That's lujay. That's what lujay is. It's like we say bottomless pit. It's like an abyss. Something very deep. You cannot see the bottom. That is bahar lujay. يغشاه موج. Not only that, but it is covered by a wave. Like there's some waves. On top of which there are waves. So there are two layers of waves. So it could be some undercurrent and then the wave. And on top of it is like very dark clouds. من فوقه سحاب. So imagine it's night and you have layers and layers of darkness. You have the darkness of the ocean, you have the darkness of the waves, you have the darkness of the night, you have the darkness of the clouds. And I hope you're able to imagine that, you're able to visualize that. Some of you have your eyes closed. That might help you imagine. Have you gotten, all of you, have you gotten this imagery? You able to imagine that?
Yeah.
Have you been to a situation like that? You were in a ship in the ocean and it was cloudy maybe?
Shipwreck?
Shipwreck. That's too dramatic, but if you've not been on a ship, maybe you've been on a shore. So I've seen it when I was on the shore and it was like winter and you could see the sea and the clouds. I mean, just being even outside, being like away from it and looking at it, it's too dark and spooky. Like you see what happens when you see the sea and there's no sun, there's dark clouds and reflects on the sea. The sea looks black because of the dark clouds. So it's quite a scene. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ظُلُمَاتٌ بَعْضُهَا فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ. Like it's layers and layers of darkness. إِذَا أَخْرَجَ يَدَهُ لَمْ يَكَدْ يَرَاهَا. If he takes out his hand, he barely could see it. So imagine somebody in that sea, maybe drowning, we don't know yet, we're going to see. Someone in that sea and maybe under these layers, and you can't even see your own hand. Now that represents complete darkness. Because no matter what, even if it is dark in a room, you get your hands close enough, you can see them. But this man can barely see his own hands. This is how bad it is. This is how dark it is. And then it says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَجْعَلِ اللَّهُ لَهُ نُورًا فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ نُورٍ. If God did not give you light, you will not have any light. Okay, great. So these are the two examples, the two analogies given in these two verses. So let's see what it is talking about. Now here, God is trying to give us two representations of evil. And evil is real. We cannot pretend it does not exist. It exists around us. We have to be aware of it. The point is, it's not to scare us, or maybe to scare us enough to be careful. Because if you're not scared at all, you go outside, you wander in the darkness at night after 10 p.m., and you think it's all fine and dandy and nothing will happen to you, you'll be naive. You have to be aware of the evil around you. You have to be aware of the danger around you. And you have to be alert all the time, especially young kids. You cannot trust everybody. You have to question every stranger around you. The same concept you see here. The reason we study this, although it might look a bit scary, is because we have to be aware of evil. And this evil could be within us sometimes, and sometimes it could be around us. So in these two verses, you see two types of evil or danger. One of them is a problem of deception. Like some people live in deception. And they deceive themselves. They try and convince themselves that they're doing something good. And this is the example of somebody chasing a mirage. They think they're doing good actions. Until they reach the day of judgment, they face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they see everything they did was nothing. It will evaporate. Just like the mirage in this life, those actions will evaporate, will disappear. You will not have anything with you. Now, there are different examples, many different examples we can think of. I mean, sometimes you meet people who are willingly deceiving themselves, even Muslims. So one type of people, for example, are people who might look religious. So they spend a lot of time on appearance, on certain actions, but they violate other foundations of Islam. The Prophet told us about one example. He told us that on the Day of Judgment, some people will come, and with them, they'll bring lots of salat, lots of zakat, lots of, siyam, all these good actions, right? So they pray, they fast, they pay charity, they pay zakat and everything. But they come and they have slandered this person. They have told lies to this person. They have cheated this person. They have hit this person unjustly. And some people just like to hit. They're just bullies. And they're hitting people left and right. And you talk to them, no, I didn't do anything. And they pretend to be innocent and everything. So this is a kind of person that, on one hand, they act impious, they feel self-righteous. On the other hand, they're just transgressors, they're bullies. They're making the life of people around them hell. I mean, literally, they make the life of the people around them like hell. They're giving hell to everybody. The minute they can cheat someone, they will do it. The minute they can backbite someone, they will do it. And this is how they conduct their lives. And they might think, well, maybe because I'm doing good actions, this will compensate for all these transgressions. But you don't realize that these people may not forgive you. See, when you sin against yourself, you can always repent. You can say, astaghfirullah, and that's good enough. But if you transgress against others, you don't know if these people are going to forgive you on the day of judgment. This is where the problem is. You don't say, well, I have sought forgiveness. That's good. But unless you go seek forgiveness from them, you don't know. You don't know if they're going to forgive you on the day of judgment. So on the day of judgment, what they can do, they can come to you and they can take from your good actions. They come and take from your good deeds until you run out. You have no good deeds. And then guess what's going to happen? They're going to start giving you bad deeds. Like you ran out of good deeds, but you still owe them. You owe them. So what's going to happen, they say, well, we're happy to give you our bad deeds. And now you start accumulating bad deeds. This is a good example of these people who are tracing a mirage. They're going after a mirage. They think they're accumulating good actions, but they're accumulating nothing. Another example is someone who's worshiping the wrong God. So you can show a lot of devotion. You could show, you can dedicate a lot of time, money, effort, but you're worshiping the wrong God. You're not worshiping the Creator who created all of us, because He's the only one worthy of worship. So you spend all your life dedicating yourself, devoting yourself to something that does not harm or benefit. That's another example. And there are many other examples. Maybe one or two more examples. And this can happen to Muslims. One is when people, they start playing with religious terminology. They start changing the meaning of certain terms. And they play around with certain aspects of religion. So there are two aspects of that. One is, you come to a sin and you say, I want to change the definition of that sin. So it's no longer a sin. You start beautifying that sin. And you say it's okay. So the Prophet told us at the end of time, this will happen. And people will start changing names. يُسَمُّونَهَا بِغَيْرِ إِسْمِهَا. So they'll come to, for example, they come to wine or alcohol, and they call it something nice. So people will be attracted to it. They call it spirits. In Arabic, they call it mashrubat ruhiyya, spiritual drinks. There's nothing spiritual about it. It's poison, it's alcohol. It intoxicates your mind. But people will change the name to make it attractive. And that's so dangerous because a lot of people will be lured to it because of the appeal. So you have poison, like you could have, now we have all these chemicals and people, I'm not saying they're poisonous, but some of it could be. You have to be careful where you buy it from, like slime or whatever, Play-Doh. You have to be careful what you buy. But the point is, if you get something that is harmful or poisonous in nature, but you start, plating it and you color it nicely, it will be appealing. It will fool many people, right? So likewise, nowadays we have riba. Riba is interest. Now we call it interest. Well, interest is something nice because there's a benefit. Like you say, I have an interest in something. It's something that benefits me. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it riba, usury. So you see how we play with terms? And so on. Like illegal relationships. We call it, maybe we call somebody a domestic partner. We make it sound right, but it is not right. Because if it is not a legal marriage, it is not right. And you see this happening over and over again. Another danger, or another example of this is when somebody wants to avoid an obligation. And again, we start playing with terms. So for example, you see somebody who does not pray, and you ask them, why don't you pray? And they say, well, I have a clean heart. I have a pure heart. Well, great, but you still don't pray. I mean, is your heart better than the Prophet's heart? The Prophet used to pray all the time. He didn't say, well, I'm clean, I'm good enough, I'm so pure, I don't have to pray. This is a wrong argument. But you see how people play with words. Or somebody might say, well, I don't wear hijab because it's not mandatory, it's not wajib. Well, where do you come with this? I mean, where do you come with this argument? Where does it come from? Does it come from a scholar? Or just because you don't want to wear it, but now you create some argument, and you convince yourself that it is okay. So these are the people who are deceiving themselves or deceiving others. And there are many other examples, but the point is, all of these fall under the first category of people who are chasing something that does not exist, and they convince themselves that it is good, they convince themselves it's a good deed, but then when they present it to Allah on the Day of Judgment, they find out it is nothing. So you can think of other examples as well. Let's move to the second example. So this one is rather scary. So the first one is like full of light, right? Like you're walking in the middle of the day. It's noon. This is when you can see a mirage. You cannot see a mirage in the evening. You cannot see a mirage in the morning. You see a mirage in the middle of the day. So this is like so much light, but you still deceive yourself. Like you might have knowledge, which is light. You might already know what is right and what is wrong, but you still choose to not do it. And the second example is the opposite. The second example of someone who does not have any knowledge, who does not have any light at all, and he's surrounded by darkness. And what happens many times, you might start with a small little mistake. And that mistake will invite another mistake. And that mistake will invite another mistake. And you keep descending into the abyss. You keep descending into darkness. And there's no bottom sometimes. And people get in so much trouble out of a small little mistake sometimes because we're not careful. So this is important to pay attention to. And the picture you get here is that you're surrounded by darkness. You see people like that. I mean, you meet people like that. Maybe their entire life is misery and hell. So you meet some people in school, maybe their parents are divorced, so they don't have any parental attention. Maybe their parents are fighting all the time. They're fighting over maybe custody, or they're fighting over visitation rights, and so on. And on top of that, this man or this woman, this young man or this young woman doesn't have good living conditions. That's another layer of darkness. They have no one to go to, and they feel miserable and depressed. I mean, they're very young but depressed at the same time. In fact, depression itself comes in layers. It becomes, it starts with some layer of darkness, and then you descend into another layer of darkness, and another layer of darkness, and so on. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides a light at the end. So there's a glimmer of light at the very end in this ayah. So we don't lose hope. You see people like that, you might be in a situation like that, because we all have a dark side, whether we realize it or not. When you feel you want to do something evil, that's your dark side speaking to you. And it could be your own nafs, your own self. Everybody has a shadow, everybody has a dark side, right? Some people don't like to admit it, but it is true. And the Quran talks about this nafs al-ammara bis-su, that side of you that is calling you to evil. And it says ammara, it's like commanding you day and night. Ammara is like an exaggeration of command. Like it commands you like crazy. It's asking you every single day to do something bad, to break the law, to break the commands of the Quran, for example. And it's acting non-stop. And this is different from shaitan, by the way. It's nothing to do with shaitan. This is you. So we all have a dark side. And sometimes you are enveloped, you are surrounded by darkness, as this ayah tells us, because you've allowed it to happen. Like for example, if you start hanging out with the wrong crowd, and they start asking you, they start daring you to do this and that. And guess what? They're going to dare you to do something that is not good. They might dare you to do something illegal. They might dare you to do something haram. They might dare you to do something dangerous. And because of peer pressure, you can't fall into it. And that's a weakness. It's not strength, it's not power if you do it. It's weakness if you fall into it. If you're strong, you say, I'm independent. I don't need these people. I don't need these friends. I'll look for better ones. That is the right approach. Because guess what happens? You're going to descend into darkness. Once you start hanging out with the wrong crowd, it starts something small. They might ask you to maybe bully someone. They might ask you to cheat. They might ask you to do something small. And then it degenerates. It devolves. And before you know it, you could, like I said, you could be breaking the law. Some people fall into drugs. They start taking drugs because of that. And again, even drugs, and you start something small like smoking, something, and then it devolves into something big. Something that's addictive, that you cannot get rid of. So see, in this picture in the Quran, these layers of darkness, this is so true. If not physically, it is so true in life, like in the life we live. Now, this is true about music. Some people start small. They start, listening to maybe rock and roll. I don't know if that exists anymore. Do you still call it? Is it rock and roll? That sounds okay. Good. And then, so you start from somewhere like rock and roll, and then you degenerate. You go down to hard rock. That's another layer of darkness. And then you go down to heavy metal. That's a very steep layer of darkness, and so on. Until you get to a point where you become what do they call them? Head banging.
White.
Hmm?
Is it white?
What is that?